So my next guest here, Avery Carl, has been in the short-term rental industry. She's really an OG. She's been in one of the first ones, one of the early adopters. So I'm super excited to have her on. She is going to talk about how she started her real estate sales business, restarted it in a new city, got into doing short-term rentals and grew that out into multiple hundreds of properties, and has a nationwide team that is assisting buyers and sellers of short-term rentals. So really great to have her on the show. And without further ado, hey there, Avery. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm actually super excited to have you. I don't get a lot of short-term rental type guests on, incidentally. So really, really curious to hear kind of how you got into short-term rentals in particular, but just in general, like how you started in real estate. If you could take us back to the beginning and kind of walk us through it. Love to hear that story.
So I definitely did not grow up saying, I think I want to be a real estate agent or real estate investor. When I grow up, it was an accident, as I think it often is with real estate investors. So the way that it kind of happened with us was we were moving from New York City to Nashville back in 2013. And our real estate agent at the time was really trying to get us to buy in this super hip, fast appreciating part of Nashville called East Nashville. And we were like, no, wait a minute. We're moving from Brooklyn to Tennessee. We want to be out in the country. We're tired of neighbors. First floor Steve and second floor Steve, the two neighbors in my 3-story brownstone that we lived in, were I don't need any more first floor, second floor people telling me what to do. No more neighbors. So we did buy a house out in the country, but we thought, man, there might be something to buying one of those houses in East Nashville and just letting the renters pay the mortgage. And then in 20, 25 years, whenever our future kids need to go to college, then we can sell that and pay for it out of the appreciation rather than out of our pockets. Now, at the time, I was a big Dave Ramsey head. I am not anymore, as you'll find out through the rest of the interview. But so we did that, and we didn't know it was called real estate investing. We didn't know what we were doing at all. We just found a deal that seemed to make sense right on the MLS, by the way. So many real estate investors get caught up with not wanting to do the MLS and not wanting to use agents. And we were just two idiots who never done it before and found an amazing deal right there on the MLS. Right under everybody's noses. So that deal cash flowed about $1,000 a month, which at the time I was working my dream job, which was working on the business side of the music industry in Nashville. And I was making $37,000 a year because the music industry, while very sexy, does not pay much because there's always an intern who will do your job for free. So we found when we got that first rent check, we were like, wait a minute. After all the deductions on my paycheck, what we're making off of this house has just doubled what my income personally was. So we said, wait, we need some more of these. So then we started educating ourselves and listening to podcasts and reading books about real estate investing. And we had just enough down payment for one more property. And we said, okay, well, what can we buy that makes us the most amount of money the fastest so that we can go buy more properties? And we landed on short-term rentals back in 2015. So things hadn't exploded yet. There weren't 1,000 gurus who bought one house last year and have paid like 3 mortgages trying to sell you a $10,000 course on it. There was no education. We just kind of figured out how to manage them on our own remotely, 4 hours away. With now there's all kinds of property management software to make that so much easier. But back then we had to do it all basically by hand. And that first property did really well. We were able to scale that from 1 to 5 cabins in the Smoky Mountains over the course of about a year and a half. 5.5 years later, we've got 250 doors. So 8 of them are short terms. The rest are single family and multifamily long-term rentals. After our second property, I decided to get my real estate license, mainly because my husband is very much a New Yorker. I'm very much a Southerner, and dealing with other Southerners, like they didn't really know how to take him. He's very direct and can be very abrasive. So I got my license so I could stop apologizing to other real estate agents for my husband being rude. So I was kind of trying to be that agent, trying to be everything to everybody, which, as we know, doesn't work. But I kept organically getting a lot of clients, a lot of people starting with just friends and then friends of friends and then true, clients who we didn't know who came to me saying, hey, you're making how much off this cabin? I want one of those. Help me find that and teach me how to manage it so I can do that too. And then the short-term shop, which is our real estate team, we're under EXP. We're the number one team at EXP right now. And we're last year too. That's kind of where it started. So we started with one office in the Smoky Mountains. Now, 5 years later, we have 19 offices and 70 agents across 19 vacation markets doing short-term rental work. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow, that's awesome. So there's so many strings I can pull on there, but it sounds like it didn't take you too long to realize that you needed to niche down in your sales business. Yeah. Like how long did it take you before you were just like, no, I'm just going to be a short-term rental person?
Oh, what a great question. So there was an exact moment in time, and I'll tell you the story. So it was my second year of real estate, and I was still living in Nashville. So I was 4 hours from the Smokies where everybody was buying stuff for me. I did sell short-term rentals in Nashville also. And I was having to drive. I had to join the MLS 4 hours away and drive 4 hours for all my showings and stuff. And I just did that. I was like, well, it's better than sitting in an office all day. I'm happy to drive, listen to my podcast. Like, cool. I get alone time. I love alone time. So, but I was still like, man, I can make so much more money if I start selling luxury. Everybody thinks that luxury is like the key to happiness. I had a couple agents leave my team to sell luxury recently. And I thought, man, if I could just do this, it would be so much easier. And I just don't want to pigeonhole myself into being the short-term rental girl. And one weekend, a friend of mine from back when I lived in Austin, I went to undergrad at UT. She said, she sent me her parents who were moving to somewhere outside of Nashville. And we looked every weekend, 2 days, both weekends for 6 weekends in a row. Sometimes the houses that they wanted to see were 3 hours apart from each other. So I was spending 12-hour days, two days every weekend, and they just could not find anything. And they had, they didn't want to spend more than like 150. So a lot of that put them in the mobile home territory. And I'd been looking with just her mom. And then her stepdad came into town for the last weekend, and he fired me on the spot because we were standing in a mobile home. And I think it was about $50,000 purchase price. I just sold $35 million worth of cabins in the Smokies. This was in December. And he fired me because I didn't know where to find the serial number on the mobile home. It's not called a serial number, but it's something like that.
Plate.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, why have I spent this much time doing this to get fired over this when I have this line of people lining up to work with me to buy short-term rentals because that's where I'm the expert. So you know what? I'm going to be the short-term rental girl. I'm not driving around looking for primary homes all weekend anymore. We're going to do this. And once I did that, my business just exploded.
Wow. Isn't it funny how that works? When you pigeonhole yourself, then you become the go-to. Yeah. So do you kind of approach it as like I'm the one that's going to tell you what to buy based on your budget, or do you still like drive around and do a lot of showings? It's just a different clientele now and different purpose. Like how is kind of that little sales process for you in deciding on the home?
So that process has changed a lot since 2016. It used to be before so many people jumped on but when it was just the early adopters, we'll put it that way, when it's just the early adopters of short-term rental investing, I mean, there were everything on the MLS that was just laying around for the past 6 months was an amazing investment. Like I have several properties that I bought back then for under 150,000, and one of them's a studio, so it doesn't even have a real bedroom. That makes $60,000 a year. I owe like $70,000 on it. And then the other two, they're one bedrooms with lofts, and they make $80,000 a year. So over the course of time, as the cat has gotten really far out of the bag in terms of short-term rental investing being a great way to start out in the real estate investing world, those deals are not just like laying around anymore. So it used to be everything on the MLS. Now it's like, if 10 things hit the market this week, it might be one or two of them might be something worth looking at. So it's kind of sorted itself out quite a bit. But a lot of investors don't want to come in town, which is really crazy to me. So we just kind of accommodate however anybody wants to do it. If you don't want to come in town, we'll take really comprehensive videos. We recommend coming in town at least during the inspection so you know what you're getting. But a lot of them do it really remotely. I would say 75% of people do it remotely. And then about 25% of people will actually come in town and look at everything before they make an offer. There's no wrong way to do it. But we have clients who bought with us sight unseen like 3 or 4 years ago and have still never seen their properties. I don't recommend doing it that way, but it can be done. So it's really just kind of whatever works for them, what their comfort level is. And then in terms of analysis, we teach people how to analyze properties. We don't analyze them for them because with short term, it's not like long term where you have a lease and the rent is what the rent is until that person moves out. You're making the same amount every month. You might have some maintenance items to do, but that's it. With short term, like 2 people can own the exact same property next door to each other and have wildly different numbers just based on how they manage it. So we teach people how to use our process to analyze short-term rentals, but we don't do it for them because there's just so much. You just really have to be comfortable with a range when it comes to short terms. Things don't sit nicely in a spreadsheet cell. So we kind of teach them how to do that. And then we kind of work through these 3 are pretty good ones. The comps are a little higher, or, maybe this one has a way you can add value, and we kind of move through it that way. So it's a very case by case basis, unfortunately. Makes it a little harder.
Yeah, certainly. Now, are you having your buyers too, like once you teach them that process, go out and just kind of bring homes that they're interested to you, or are you also, shooting homes to them that you think like, hey, this could be a good one? Like, how's that part?
So we obviously send them a lot of houses, but there's always going to be like something when everybody's going to be cruising Zillow during their lunch hour when they're looking at houses, regardless of what you send them. So there's always going to be, something where some agent who's a member of some random MLS 2 hours away lists a cabin in the Smokies, or, something in Scottsdale or Sedona when they live in Scottsdale, and that will show up on MLS and realtor.com that aren't coming from our MLS feeds. So we definitely encourage our clients, like, hey, if you see anything that we didn't happen to send you, shoot it to us. It isn't necessarily that we didn't think it was a good deal, but it might have been like a weird technological thing, like posted on the wrong MLS. So typically we'll send them, but we also encourage them to, if they see anything, shoot it over to us.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So do you when they come to you with something outside of your area, like in Scottsdale, right? You kind of a ways from Arizona. How do you handle that? Do you just refer it, or is your team that broad now?
Oh, we've got 2 agents in Scottsdale, so that's one of our offices. The first one was in the Smokies, but we've got offices in Washington State, Scottsdale. Those are the furthest west. We don't do California, but the rest of them are in the Southeast, and I guess Oklahoma is not really the Southeast, but we've got an office there in Broken Bow too. So we're in a lot of places. If it's somewhere that we don't do, like California, I know a few agents in a few markets there that are really good for short-term rentals, and we'll just send them over to them.
No, that makes sense. Are you managing your clients' properties too, or are you just recommending them out?
So we teach our clients how to self-manage because the way that the splits work for property management for short terms, it's a lot higher than long term. So the average split is 20 to 25%, and to give you of your gross, not of your net. So to give a little context to that, of my 8 short-term rentals, if I'd paid somebody that last year, I would have paid them over $250,000. So, for a $50,000 tops gig. So we teach our clients how to self-manage because there's a lot of property management software out there now that makes it really, really easy to where they can keep that 250 if they have that many properties. But most of our clients are really trying to scale. So they want to be able to keep that 20 to 25% and use it for their next down payment. Maybe when they get to where they want to be and they're in cruise mode, no longer in growth mode, then they might put it with a manager. But most of our clients self-manage.
That's cool. I love how you're using the MLS. It's almost like the last place that investors aren't looking. As you are looking for these off markets, these direct to seller wholesale deals, and it's like the MLS is a huge marketplace and really easy to peruse. So it's kind of refreshing to hear someone still using that for short term rentals.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of investors don't like, they listen to a lot of podcasts and see a lot of things. And we do a lot of off market stuff now because we have so many past buyers that are now sellers. We're like, hey guys, you need a 4 bedroom with a pool? Well, let me check with all my people that bought in 2017 and see if anybody wants to sell. But a lot of investors, they think that like anytime there's a house that might potentially need to be sold, first, all the investors get to look at it and then they pass it off. They didn't buy it, so now the wholesalers get to look at it. And if nobody buys it in the wholesalers, then it goes on the MLS, so it must be complete garbage. And that's just not how it works. 90% of the general population who might be selling a house have no idea what a wholesaler is. And if one called them, they might be like, why are you like scamming me right now? So most people, if they want to sell their house, they go, well, let me call that real estate agent that I saw. So a lot of times it's just that people don't know about typical sellers don't really know about the world of real estate investing and where people look. So they just call an agent and put it on the MLS. So I've definitely bought stuff off market myself. I've bought stuff from wholesalers, but I think that the MLS is a very underutilized platform when it comes to just investing in general. Like that very first one that I got that was cash flowing $1,000 a month as a long term, right there on the MLS. And the reason we were able to get a really good deal is because the seller's daughter had just gotten her real estate license and she did not run comps right. She put it on the MLS with no pictures, and we just went and looked at it that day and we're like, my gosh, this is really nice. We better offer on this before she puts pictures on the MLS. So you can capitalize on people's mistakes on the MLS
right?
as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It might even be a little bit more. I mean, and with those off-market stuff, I feel like most of the time they're distressed and hardly make the cut for like a high-producing short-term rental, especially now where you're like, as you were saying, you could put anything on Airbnb 2-3 years ago and it would make money. And now all those people, I feel like that put anything on there are losing money, and only the ones that have figured out how to stand out. They got the nice property, it's spacious, it's got a pool, they understand they're in hospitality. Like, it's more important than ever now to be that type of operator, as opposed to anything.
Yeah, and the types of markets that we work in too are all like true vacation markets, with the exception of like Scottsdale and then outside Orlando, the Disney market. Those are like kind of metro, kind of vacation, like hybrid markets, but everything else is a true vacation market. So all of the properties in these markets for decades and decades before Airbnb existed have always been second homes or vacation rentals. So those types of sellers aren't typically going to get to the point of being distressed where they have to unload it for pennies on the dollar. They just sell it at retail before, if primary homes are typically what gets distressed because that's like your last thing that you have when you're in financial trouble. So in the markets that we're in, like people are like, oh, crap, I'm not making as much money this year. Guess I better sell my vacation home, and they unload it at retail and move on. So it's just kind of a different, that the whole like wholesaler distress thing works better with single family, what will be long-term rentals that are somebody's primary home now, like in a metro.
Yeah, totally. So what's next? I mean, you've built an empire since 2015. It's super impressive. Keep growing it, or what's on the horizon?
So we're keeping on growing it. We're just kind of seeing what happens with the economy right now. We've opened quite a few markets this year, focusing on lower budget markets since interest rates are higher, to kind of try and counteract that, to give our clients some options. So we're kind of just seeing what happens right now, making sure that our processes are what they need to be for when interest rates go back down and things get speed back up again. Because 2 years ago, it got so crazy. Our phones were ringing so much that we had to just turn them off because we couldn't get to everybody. Everybody wanted to buy a short-term rental, and people were getting mad at us that we were like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you, and then never did. So we're fixing all the things that kind of volume broke in our systems and processes, so that when interest rates do go back down and people start buying a lot of stuff again, we're ready and prepared for that.
That's super. This is a great time to do it for sure, because business isn't going away. Wow, that's given the the price to revenue ratio is obviously the ultimate determinator of how much return you're going to get out of a property, and that ratio has been diluted a bit, I think, especially since when you started in 2015. So where do you see the best, the kind of the industry headed in terms of being successful in short-term rentals? Where are people looking? Where's it headed? What are your thoughts there?
So, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck right now in terms of income versus purchase price is going to be Branson, Missouri. And in terms of, not everybody is going to buy there or wants to buy there, but, wherever you happen to be looking, the name of the game now is amenities and decor. So, like you've said a couple times, you used to be able to just buy like a middle of the road house and put some secondhand furniture in there and slap it up on Airbnb and make money. Now it really does have to be kind of an experience, and it doesn't have to cost that much to do something like that. Like an Instagram mural wall in the living room is not terribly expensive to do. So I'm not talking about like ripping down houses and rebuilding them. Adding like golf simulators, that is an expensive one. Actually, it's a bad example. Like a little putt. We see a lot of people doing like little putting greens in the backyard. Now you got to have pools. So there's a lot of ways to add cool amenities that people will want to use. Like I've got one of the agents on my team is adding a snow cone bar to her house right now. It's just a few $100, but people will be like, oh, that's cool. My kids are going to love the snow cone bar. So amenities and decor, I think, are going to be what sets people apart moving forward. And then, of course, optimizing your management.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So if someone wants to, work with you and your extensive network and expertise, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can hit us on our website. It's theshorttermshop.com, and then all social media at The Short Term Shop. Just shoot us a message and we'll get you where you need to go.
Awesome. And are you always looking to bring on, if someone's in real estate and kind of wants to take their career in your direction, are you taking on any new agents?
That is a really good question. So yes, we are hiring currently in Scottsdale. We've got 2 agents there now, but one's moving away. And if you feel like your market, like you work in a market that we aren't in yet, but it might be a good one, hit us up, because we open new markets all the time. As long as they're something that's going to make sense for our investors, we bring the clients to you. So if there's a market that we're not in that you think that you live in, that you're like, man, I think this will work, shoot us an email.
Awesome, Avery. Well, it's been great having you on. Thanks so much for kind of just spilling all this knowledge and gold nuggets for my audience. I really appreciate it, and hope we get to stay in touch and maybe do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.